What if a few pieces of copper wire could transform into an elegant hanging chandelier that sparkles day and night? In today's tutorial, that's exactly what we're going to do. This chandelier is a beautiful statement piece for gardens, patios, special occasions, or simply just adding that handmade special touch into your backyard. So grab your copper wire and your pliers. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button and let's dive in. The materials you're going to need today are 10 gauge copper wire, 16 gauge copper wire, some dangling chandelier beads. I have a affiliate link below if you want to support my channel. These were actually a really good deal. Then you'll need 3 glasses. It's better to have it wider on the top, narrower on the bottom. 3 candles, and then your tools, which of course is a hammer, a steel block, some bigger pliers, bale pliers, and some small cutters, plus my trusty bolt cutters. I'm pretty excited to make this craft. The last time I did a chandelier was about 20 years ago, and I didn't have these, which I picked up on Amazon. I have a link below for a full bag. And I'm so excited to be able to use chandelier looking beads. If you don't have any, you can also use marbles. That's what I used 20 years ago. So we're going to start with 4. We're starting with 4 strands of 50 inches or 127 centimeters of 10 gauge copper wire. I have already done one of the strands just to confirm that it's sturdy and that everything works well. So it does. So we're going to replicate this 2 more times, and then we're going to add the center. I'll move these out of the way. Okay, so let's get started.
We are starting with the first piece of my copper wire chandelier. This is the little glass holder section, and yes, we are officially entering chandelier territory. Fancy? Maybe. Beginner friendly? Absolutely. Slightly intimidating until the first spiral behaves? Also, yes. For this piece, I'm using 10 gauge copper wire for the main frame and 16 gauge wire for wrapping and adding stability around the glass holder. Start with a length of copper wire and begin at the bottom. The first thing we're going to make is the bottom spiral. Using your round or flat nose pliers, grab the very end of the wire and make a small loop. Then keep turning the wire around itself to create a spiral. Try to keep it fairly even, but don't stress too much. Handmade wire has personality. That's what we're calling it. Once your bottom spiral is formed, gently pull the wire upward. This spiral is going to sit underneath the glass container and act like a decorative base. It also gives the piece that pretty twirly chandelier look right from the start. Now hold your glass container up against the wire so you can see where it needs support. We're going to bend the wire underneath the bottom of the glass. This little bend helps create a seat for the jar to rest on, so it isn't just dangling there hoping for the best. Place the glass container where you want it to sit, then carefully curve the copper wire around it. Be careful when wrapping the 10 gauge wire around the glass. I wrapped mine around about 2 times. These wraps help hold the glass in place and give the design that pretty handmade copper look. I like to adjust as I go, checking that the glass is sitting straight and that the wire isn't sliding around. After the 3 wraps are done, bring the wire up toward the top of the glass container. Now we're going to make a small curve at the top of the jar. This top curve is important because it helps stop the glass from slipping out. Think of it like a little copper safety hug for the jar. Cute, useful, and slightly bossy. Bend the wire gently so it curves over or near the top edge of the glass. You don't need to completely cover the opening. You just want enough of a curve to help lock the glass into place. Now that the glass holder section is shaped, we can start making the decorative curves. From the top of the glass area, bring the wire down into a soft bottom curve. This gives the piece movement and keeps it from looking too stiff. Copper wire is great for this because you can slowly shape it with your hands and pliers until it feels balanced. After the bottom curve, bring the wire back upward and create the top curve. This is where the chandelier piece starts to look more elegant and flowy. Try to keep your curves smooth, but again, don't panic if they're not identical. This is handmade copper wire, not a factory machine. Once you're happy with the top curve, it's time to finish with the top spiral. Just like we did at the bottom, use your pliers to make a small loop at the end of the wire. At this point, pause and look at the whole piece. Make sure the glass sits securely, the bottom spiral is centered enough, and the top section feels balanced. This is the part where I usually hold it up, squint a little, tilt my head, and pretend I'm doing very serious engineering. Now we're going to make the second chandelier piece, and the steps are basically the same as the first one, but this time our first piece becomes the measuring guide. Start with your bottom spiral, but before you commit to the size, hold it up beside the first piece. Make sure the spiral is about the same size and shape. Then hold your glass container in place, bend the wire underneath the glass, and wrap the 10-gauge wire around the jar 2 times. Before making each curve, hold it up to the first piece again. Match the bottom curve, then the top curve, and finally the top spiral. This part is less about rushing and more about checking as you go. Hold it up, compare, bend a little, compare again. For piece number 3, follow the exact same process again. Once all 3 pieces are similar shape and size, take your 16-gauge wire and wrap it around the main wire where the glass container sits. This is going to make that glass holder area sturdier and help lock everything together. Start wrapping near the section where the glass is supported and continue wrapping neatly around the main wire. The wrap doesn't have to be perfect, but try to keep each coil close to the next one. This gives it a clean, finished look and adds strength at the same time. Once you've wrapped enough to make the piece feel sturdy, trim the extra wire and tuck the end in carefully with your pliers. Make sure there are no sharp ends sticking out. Repeat this step for piece 2 and 3.
And now that we're done, the 3 where we're putting the glass jars, we're only going to do 3, not 4. And this is going to go down the center of it. So I'm working from the bottom. And we're going to do spirals on each side. So it's going to be placed kind of as the top piece and the bottom piece. So you can make it your own. Oh, these are all twisted. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, keep these apart when you make them. There we go, untwisted. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make a long spiral at the bottom, and these are going to be in the center of here. So it's going to be an extra piece hanging out from the top and an extra piece hanging out from the bottom.
It's basically a pretty connector piece that sits between the 3 hanging glass pieces and helps bring the whole chandelier together. Start with the bottom spiral. Using your round nose pliers, make a small loop at the end of the wire. Then keep turning the wire around itself to create a nice spiral. Take your time here because this spiral will be visible once the chandelier is hanging. Once the bottom spiral is done, gently bring the wire out into a long, soft curve. Now we're going to add a little squiggle in the middle. This does not need to be perfect. In fact, the little handmade wiggle gives it charm. Just bend the wire into a soft wave so it has some movement instead of being completely straight. After the squiggle, compare the length of the wire to the other pieces. It should stick out on both ends. I cut my wire about 4 inches as it was a little too long. Once you are satisfied with the length, make the top spiral on the opposite end. Curl it down just enough that it will stick out on top. Once the middle piece looks balanced, it's time to hammer. Take all 4 wire pieces and hammer the spirals. This will flatten them slightly, add a pretty texture, and make the wire stronger. Hammer gently and evenly. We're not trying to punish the wire. We're just giving it a little chandelier confidence. Once all the spirals are hammered, the pieces will feel sturdier, more polished.
Okay, now that I have all the spirals hammered, we're on to the next step, and we're just going to test it. We're holding all of these up together with the one in the middle. Oh, and that's going to look so cool. This just needs to move over. That is going to look so cool. You can test it with your glasses if you want. And this is the time to just adjust. And perfect. Make sure everything's nice and sturdy. And it is going to look so good. Okay, so actually we will wrap. We're going to be on to wrapping the base here now. Right now I'm just going to make it sturdy. So I'm going to use the beginner tip to make this sturdy, which is first we're going to wrap it with tape just to hold it in place. Now I had my tape here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we're going to wrap each one with tape, and in the end, of course, the tape is going to be hidden with the copper wire, so we don't have to worry about that. We're going to do one at a time for the moment, and we're just lining up the bottom and the top like that, and straightening out the stick as much as we can. And I'm just going to tape the first one nice and tight like that, and I'm just doing it in the middle for now. Okay, good. And then I'm putting another one on this side, and I'm going to tape that one. There we go. Just nice and tight in the center right now. And this step just helps that you don't get frustrated as you're trying to wrap. Then I'm going to tape the third one, and I'm again doing the top and bottom, probably about right there. Perfect. And just wrapping it around. Okay, awesome. Oh, so excited about this. And now we're going to take, I'm actually going to keep it nice and sturdy, we're going to do 16 gauge wire, and we're going to wrap.
Now we're going to start connecting and strengthening the chandelier frame with 16 gauge wire. This step is important because the 16 gauge wire helps keep everything in place, adds stability, and makes the whole piece feel less wobbly and more chandelierish. Very official, very fancy. We're going to start in the middle first. Take your 16 gauge wire and begin wrapping around the center connection point. Keep the wraps snug and close together. You don't need to pull so hard that the wire starts arguing with you, but you do want it tight enough to hold the pieces firmly in place. At this point, I decided to tape the bottom and top to keep things from moving around so much. Wrap several times around the middle until it feels secure. This middle wrap is like the anchor point, so take your time here. If the center is strong, the rest of the chandelier will sit much better. Next, we're going to move to the bottom stem. Hold the wires together where they meet near the bottom and start wrapping again with the 16 gauge wire. Keep your wraps neat and tight, working your way around the stem to lock everything together. This helps keep the bottom section from shifting around and gives the piece a cleaner, more finished look. It also adds a little decorative detail, which is always a bonus because we like our structural support to look cute. Once the bottom feels secure, trim the extra wire and gently tuck the end in with your pliers so there are no sharp bits sticking out. Now we're going to do the same thing at the top stem. Line up the top section, check that everything is still hanging evenly, and then wrap the 16 gauge wire around the top stem. This will help hold the upper curves and spirals in place and keep the whole chandelier piece from twisting out of shape. Again, keep the wraps close together and snug. Think of it as giving the chandelier a tiny copper seat belt. Once the top stem is wrapped, trim the end and tuck it in carefully. Now, everything should feel much sturdier. The middle is secure, the bottom is supported, and the top stem is locked into place. At this point, the chandelier is starting to feel less like random wire pieces and more like an actual project with a plan, which is always a nice surprise.
Okay, we have now wrapped them together and they're becoming more stable. And before we put the beads on, you're just going to test it. And if something feels not so stable, you just have to adjust, adjust, adjust. There we go. And then you just look at the spirals. Maybe see these ones, you bend up so that they're all kind of, there we go. Okay, that is looking so good. And now we're on to the danglies. Now, unfortunately, these danglies, well, they came with wire already wrapped, but they're not copper wire. And so I'm going to have to take these all apart. You can decide if you just want to leave them like this and dangle, or if you want to do copper wires. But I will teach you how to do the little loops in between these if you want to change them up. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I think it's worth it.
Now we're going to make the little loops that go in between the chandelier beads. For this step, I'm using bail pliers because they help make nice, even loops. You can use round nose pliers too, but bail pliers make it easier to keep the loops a consistent size. Start with a small piece of 20 gauge wire. Place the end of the wire around one side of your bail pliers and wrap it around several times. This just takes a little practice, but once you get the hang of it, then it goes rather quickly. Then use your cutters and cut. You want each loop to overlap so they stay closed. Once you have enough loops, start connecting them to your beads and squeezing everything together. If the loop looks a little wonky, just adjust it with your pliers. Repeat this for each bead section until you have enough connectors for your chandelier. Small step, big sparkle payoff.
Okay, those bail pliers worked rather well for making these loops with 20 gauge copper wire. And I made 9 different, groups of 3. So 3 groups of 3. One is 3 beads with this dangling thing. And then the next group was 2 beads with the dangling bead. And then the last one was just the dangling bead. So the next step is just putting it all together.
Now that the main chandelier frame is together, we're going to add the fun part, the dangling bead, and this part is very flexible. There really isn't a strict order here. I just started adding beads wherever the chandelier looked like it needed a little sparkle, movement, or balance. Use your wire loop connectors or jump rings to attach the beads to different parts of the chandelier frame. You can add them near the spirals, along the center section, under the curves, or anywhere that feels a little empty. As you go, hold the chandelier up and let everything hang naturally. This helps you see where the beads are sitting and whether one side feels heavier than the other. I moved things around a few times until the design felt balanced. This is one of those steps where you don't need to overthink it. Just add a bead, hold it up, squint at it dramatically, and decide if it belongs there. In the end, I liked the longest bead strands hanging under the glass holders. It gave the chandelier a pretty finished look and added more sparkle underneath the candles. Once you're happy with the placement, check that all the loops are closed tightly so the beads stay secure. And that's the fun part done. The chandelier now has movement, sparkle, and just the right amount of fancy.
The next step is just putting it all together. So I have little candles here. I decided to go with shorter ones here in case the candle would get too hot. I didn't want those to get too hot. So shorter ones here, 3s here, and 2s here. And then take your time to do the final adjustments. If you need to put more wire around it, I've noticed that this one needs to come down a bit. Just do your last and maybe push these in a bit like that. If everything, there we go. Oh, that looks so cool. I'm just going to keep adjusting a little bit until they feel good. I'm so excited to hang this on my tree. I think it turned out rather well. What do you think? Would you do something different? I just love these dangling beads. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.